The Armenian National Committee is a grassroots organization, which means that the work is directed from the local level.
Wherever there are Armenians, there is an ANC, whether you're talking about Philadelphia, Detroit, Chicago, and even places that you may not expect, where there are smaller communities, Wisconsin, Richmond, Virginia, even Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. This is very important because one of the major areas that we work is regarding legislative affairs.
The Armenian National Committee was at the forefront of getting an Armenian genocide bill introduced in the House and in the Senate. We had many Republicans who had never supported us before come on strongly.
We have been working with the regional and Washington offices, advocating for human rights and civil rights for the Armenians of Turkey and other countries, working for Karabakh's right to security and self-determination.
Armenian Americans strongly believe in Karabakh's right to self-determination and expect the congressman to reject Azerbaijan's dangerous proposal for the sake of peace in the region. In the end, Congressman Hastings, along with the other OSCE members, voted to keep the resolution off the agenda.
Recently, the Armenian National Committee of New York held a fundraiser for Congressman John Sweeney. As a Republican, he's actually challenged his own leadership. He's been one of our greatest champions on Capitol Hill.
We go much further than merely congressional activity. When we speak of legislative affairs, we also mean state legislatures. Legislation where a state has recognized the Republic of Mountainous Karabakh.
Be it resolved that the United States government recognize the newly formed Republic of Mountainous Karabakh, that the United States establish full diplomatic relations with the duly elected government, and that the United States take all appropriate measures to assure the survival of the Democratic Republic.
The ANC of Wisconsin's greatest accomplishment is perhaps the adoption of genocide resolutions in the State Assembly and State Senate. Both these resolutions designate April 24th of each year as a day of remembrance of the Armenian genocide.
We've passed genocide curriculum.
We are making progress in Illinois. Illinois is one of a handful of states, with 6 states have mandated teaching the Armenian genocide.
To stand alongside this organization and work with you so that we can educate the children and the people of the state of Illinois.
I have been delighted with the support I've been getting from people here. If you leave it just to teachers, it won't get done.
This program, the Genocide Education Network of Illinois, is going to be vital in years to come.
The state legislature, the House and the Senate unanimously passed legislation calling on the Board of Education to design a human rights and genocide curriculum.
The most horrific events of mankind ought to be taught so that someday when one of them sees one of those injustices happening again, it will speak out against it.
That guideline, in draft form, initially incorporated a number of Turkish denialist websites.
Since when are foreign government websites educational resources?
The Board of Education then released its final document, and it included no reference to the Turkish websites. In October of 2005, the Assembly of Turkish American Associations filed a lawsuit against the state of Massachusetts, claiming that the fact that those websites were not included in the curriculum materials has infringed on their freedom of speech rights. Across Massachusetts, we have 4 Armenian National Committees that immediately jumped to action on this and said we will oppose any effort, including the legal efforts, to try to dismiss the teaching of the Armenian genocide in any way.
A second one is media relations. Media relations mean a number of things. It means making sure that Armenian history, the Armenian cause, is represented fairly and accurately.
I work on anti-defamation within the media. We have an organization set up to monitor the media around the country, but not only that, but to be proactive in that regard, to initiate positive press, pointing out our issues.
The Boston Globe for years had a written policy not to use the word genocide in its news stories. An ongoing ANC campaign included demonstrations, letters to the newspaper. The ANC decided to step up this campaign with a number of historians, and that policy finally changed. The Boston Globe now uses the word genocide as it should, and this real breakthrough probably played no small role when the New York Times changed its own policy as well.
And we hope to move that across to other media outlets.
On the issue of PBS's panel, which includes known deniers of the Armenian genocide.
The Armenian National Committee set up a very detailed alert.
We were able to hold a press conference with the broader community, 9,000 plus letters, emails, were sent out to PBS.
And we were largely successful around the country. Over 60% of the PBS stations did not cover that panel.
A third area, and a very important area, is that of activism.
When the government of Azerbaijan desecrated an Armenian gravesite and the U.S. State Department did little, if anything, about it, we held demonstrations in New York and Washington so the world would know that we won't stand by while governments commit these sorts of atrocities.
Organizing protests at the annual Assembly of Turkish American Associations Convention, and of course, taking our grievances directly to the Turkish government by organizing protests at the Turkish consulate here in Chicago.
The local demonstration we had in front of the Turkish embassy, it was a huge turnout. It was in large measure due to the ability to get the system of the down here. We simply drowned out the Turks.
There's a genocide ongoing right now, taking place today in Darfur.
The Armenian National Committee was in the forefront with the Darfur National Movement in New York.
In a congressional leaders rally outside the embassy in Washington.
We were there standing with those congressmen saying that Armenians stand with all those that are being oppressed.
Academia is a new battleground where, of course, the Turkish government uses its money in order to try to express a distorted version of history.
Heath Lowry, who in the early 1990s was given a chair at Princeton University in the Near East Studies Department, some International Association of Genocide Scholars were able to expose his activities, show his ties directly to the Turkish embassy. He was largely discredited. And since that time, because of the fallout, he has been largely absent from the public discussions about the Armenian genocide. It's a very important step, and the ANC was crucial in the efforts to really show this denier for what he was. Other people, for instance, at Princeton include Norman Itzkowitz, who went so far as to denigrate survivors of the Armenian genocide.
Here I had a student, an Armenian, who followed me almost every day and asked me, didn't I know what the Turks had done to his people? I asked him, where do you get this from? He said, I get it from my grandmother. I said, well, that's typical. Your mother and father are out working, they make enough money to send you to Princeton, and Granny's got nothing to do but sit at home and fill you full of this stuff.
And because of the outcry that the ANC was able to raise over his clearly racist anti-Armenian remarks, he again was discredited publicly.
As Turkey wishes to distort Armenian history, change its own history to deny the genocide, academia is an important battleground.
Last December, we hosted at Worcester State an international symposium on reparations issues, and we were pleased to be able to integrate Armenian land claims with so many other groups.
We've been at the forefront around the country and around the world of putting reparations and restitution as a critical aspect to justice for the Armenian genocide.
One of the important ways in which we succeed in pursuing the Armenian cause is through coalition building. In the case of Armenians on the left, we're working with strong Turkish voices.
Turkey needs to recognize the genocide for two reasons. The first is ethical. The second is political. Until a government is formed that accepts the Armenian genocide, there is no hope for a true democracy in Turkey.
We've also brought Robert Fisk, an acclaimed journalist who turned the tide in England in getting newspapers to recognize the Armenian genocide.
In October, a Turkish publisher is publishing my book, complete with a full chapter on the Armenian genocide, which is referred to in the book, and the title chapter is the first Holocaust of the previous century. And I will be lecturing across Turkey on the Armenian genocide.
One of the highlights of the last 2 years was the day-long music festival, Armenian 2004, which was an event in support of the presidential campaign of John Kerry.
Many of you don't realize the power that you have as individuals, the power that we have as a community.
In your determination to not let the world forget the genocide, you haven't just defended your own rights, you've sent a very important lesson to the rest of the world.
We increase the impact of the ANC by working with these other groups and making joint appeals wherever possible.
The Armenian National Committee represents a vehicle for your voices to be heard.
And that's what being part of the Armenian National Committee means. It means not being passive, being active, an active participant.
Armenian Americans have come forth, have been calling us to say how can they be involved, what can they do to help.
Volunteering for the ANCA is a labor of love.
Thank you all for your support.
But we can't do it alone. We have these chapters throughout the United States, but they cannot operate without your support. So I urge everyone to join your local ANC. Support them in any way that you can. If you can't give your time, at least give some financial support.
Each day, every day, ANC volunteers are out there doing what they can and making a difference.
The grassroots activism coupled with academic and other kinds of activism have really had an impact on the credibility of denial.
It will not be long before the arithmetic is done and we see this crime recognized.